We might be one football game away from having a "we're a basketball school" trend in Iowa State Twitter. Whatever. It isn't happening yet, and I hold on to the hope that it won't happen. If you asked Cyclone Nation at the start of the season if they would be happy with a 7-2 start to the season, every last one of us would have said yes, without fail. And even though those two losses are consecutive, it doesn't mean that the ship can't be righted. The offense last week found ways to be effective, which means the usual means of shooting ourselves in the foot actually found a way to fix their problems. Even with limited depth, especially in the linebacking core, the ISU defense has found ways to be solid over and over again, with the game against KU being the exception to the rule. So what if the Cyclones aren't invisible? We don't have to be. We still have a path to the playoff, and it starts with beating the Bearcats tomorrow night. Today is Friday, November 15th. I'm Matt Menson, and welcome to the Cornfield Sports Pod. Yeah, let's get into that Kansas loss here real briefly, because there's a lot to talk about. Neutral game at Arrowhead. They artificially increased the price for ISU fans specifically. They sent out a discount code to their own fans so that their own fans could get in cheaper to try to artificially manipulate who the crowd was in favor of. That was a bunch of nonsense, but it ended up not mattering because Brent Bloom got a hold of the discount code and sent it out to Cyclone Twitter and put it out on the message boards. So it still ended up being a fairly friendly crowd to Iowa State. Not as friendly as it could have been, but it was there. Either way, it was friendlier at the start than it was at the end because at one point Kansas was up like 31-10. Not a pretty game. The biggest question for this one, where was the defense? We allowed 532 yards of total offense, 237 of which were on the ground. And that was all split between Devin Neal, Daniel Highshaw, and Jelon Daniels. Devin Neal had over 100 yards. Highshaw and Daniels didn't. But our run defense was just non-existent. Three-man front that couldn't do anything. They couldn't even keep all five of the offensive linemen occupied. We got a very weak linebacking core right now that just isn't able to get the job done because there isn't enough of them. We don't have the depth right now. I mean, we're at the very bottom of the depth chart for that. If we get any more injuries, we're, basically just tearing into walk-ons and we're well beyond scholarship athletes at that position, or we're going to have to start moving guys around on the roster just to get guys who are athletic there. It's not a good spot to be sitting in right now for the linebacking core, and I'll get to what I think we should do about that here in a minute. The pass game, too. We had struggled to stop the pass game. The Kansas pass game was inefficient, don't get me wrong. Jelon Daniels was only 12 for 24. It's 50% completion rating is not a lot. But that still got 295 yards. That's 12.3 yards per drop back. But you got to double that for yards per completion because, again, he only completed 50%. That's 24.6 yards per completion is a lot. That's explosive plays on almost every single completed pass. And our secondary couldn't track a receiver all night. Wide open, time and time again. And Jelon Daniels should have had more pass yards and he should have had more completions because his receivers, when they were wide open, dropped a lot of balls that were not the result of the Iowa State defense being successful, but a result of Kansas shooting themselves in the foot on offense. They could have had more very easily. And while we can, assign some of the blame with the run defense being insufficient to, the linebackers are really young and inexperienced and we're at the very bottom of the depth chart right now, we can't be doing that for the pass game. We have our starters in there. This is supposed to be the best pass defense in the Big 12. This is supposed to be one of the best pass defenses in the country. The secondary is supposed to be elite. They did not look elite by any means at all last Saturday. Not even remotely close. It was atrocious. Um, and I mean, take a look at their top receiver for the night. Uh, Kansas's Quentin Skinner, four receptions with an average of 33.8 yards per catch. It's one thing if that happens on two catches, and one of them happened to be like a 70-yard, 80-yard bomb, whatever. No, 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 no. As soon as you get beyond about two catches, that kind of number is absolutely asinine. Oh, yeah, and Kansas also had two other receivers that were averaging over 30 yards a catch. So we couldn't stop them. There was nothing we could do to stop their receivers all night. And I don't know what some of our coverage calls were, because they were, indistinguishable from just running around like chickens with your head cut off and not actually covering receivers, because we weren't covering receivers. That is definitely not something that we were doing. And we were only able to get legitimate stops 3 times over the course of the game. They did have an additional missed field goal. I'm not counting that as a legitimate stop because they should have scored on that and they didn't. But we forced 3 punts, not a single turnover. Our defense was terrible. Our defense was just terrible. And they didn't give our offense a chance to be in the game. And if they had, we would have won the game. Because our offense wasn't actually all that bad. Our offense played good enough to win most games. Now, our rush offense, that actually was that bad. 78 yards combined. And nobody rushed more than 50. So that wasn't pretty. But the pass offense made up for it. I mean, we actually utilized an aggressive offense for once. Jaden Higgins and Jalen Knoll, I mean, they pulled a lot of the weight with that one. Jalen Knoll had over 120 yards receiving on, it was like 9 receptions or something like that. Those two were carrying a ton of weight. Steve O'Klotz did some work. Gabe Burkle did some work. We actually had an injury scare with Gabe Burkle. He ended up returning later in the game, so that's not something that I think we need to be overly concerned about, but maybe just watch a little bit here in the coming week. Ben Bramer obviously was not playing. He's out. But as a whole, I mean, look at Rocco Beck's, stats here. 24 for 37. Okay, not great, but it's not bad either. It's certainly not bad. 383 yards. Okay, that's an eye-opening number. That's good. 3 touchdowns. That's good. Like to see that kind of stuff. 1 interception. Okay, not great. We don't want to be doing that. 10.4 yards per dropback. All right, that's a satisfactory number. I'm not going to turn down 10.4 yards per dropback. That's first down numbers. So we need to be retaining this kind of offense. Tomorrow night when we play Cincinnati, Cincy is on a 2-game losing streak of their own. They had a loss at Colorado. I believe that was 2 weeks ago, and West Virginia was last week, or maybe it was the other way around. I don't remember. Yeah, I think it was the other way around now that I think about it. But our defense absolutely has to improve in order to secure a win, because this Cincinnati team can still be pesky. And with our very limited linebacker core right now and a distinct lack of depth, our 3-3-5 scheme has been unreliable. And the question is John Haycock going to be adaptable enough to move to a 4-man front? Or is he going to be stubborn and stick with that 3-3-5, which is getting us burnt? Right now, if we're going to successfully stop the run game and put pressure on quarterbacks, we need to switch to having 4 down linemen and less linebackers. That's what we need to do. We need to switch to having a 4-3, or sorry, not a 4-3 scheme, a 4-2-5 scheme, or even go to the dime package and just go 4-1-6. I think a 4-2-5 would be a little bit better because it's not quite as aggressive of a change, not quite as extreme. But we got to change something because 3-3-5 is not working right now. It It's just opening too many gaps in the box. If you have really good linebackers like Iowa State has had in the past, then we can shut that down but in order to shut run down in a 3-3-5 scheme, you have to have elite linebackers. When we had, Joel Lanning running around back there, when we had Marcel Spears running around back there, Mike Rose, Orion Vance, those guys, those were the elite level linebackers that we needed to shut down the run from a 3-3-5 scheme. And if Caleb Bacon was healthy right now, then I think we can have that conversation about, the 3-3-5 scheme potentially being effective. But Caleb Bacon's not healthy. He's probably not going to play for the entire year. So we need to switch to 4-down linemen if we're going to successfully stop the run game, and for that matter, put pressure on quarterbacks, because the 3-man front has not been doing that effectively either. And then on the offensive side of the ball, if the run game is going to continue to be ineffective, we need to continue the offensive strategy that was effective against Kansas. We have to aggressively pass the ball. We have to balance the speed abilities of Jalen Knoll with the 50-50 ball ability of Jaden Higgins, because that's going to keep the defense honest, keep them from knowing where that ball is going to go. If they start doubling Jalen or doubling Jaden, that's when you leak the ball to Steve O'Klotz or to Abu Sama on the outside or something like that. Maybe you get it on a slip screen to Jalen Jackson. There's all sorts of different things you could do with that. But we need to be a pass first team and not a run first team, because being a run first team is just going to mean we have less offense. So the spread on this game right now, according to FanDuel, Iowa State minus 7.5, over under 53.5. What do I want to do with this one? I don't feel like it's going to be that high scoring of a game. It being at night, that it's getting kind of cold. We're going to see some dew on the turf. Last I looked, I think we have some potential for rain tomorrow night. I think that it's going to be a catalyst for a lower scoring game. I think Cincinnati covers the spread here. Give me Iowa State 20, Cincinnati 14, and the under hits by a lot. This is not going to be a particularly high-scoring game. Let's move on to a sport that has somehow managed to disappoint us more than football has in the last 2 weeks. Volleyball. The season is completely collapsed. The season is effectively over. We lost to Colorado and ended their losing streak, retained ours. We've effectively dropped to third to last in the Big 12. We have no positive momentum whatsoever. We're 1 game ahead of West Virginia, 2 games ahead of UCF. And in that game against Colorado, Durandi and Wacholtz led the teams. They had 15 and 13 kills respectively, which, I mean, those are fine numbers. But if you're going to put up those kind of numbers, you also have to have control to go along with that. And that's where we didn't. Iowa State as a team had 23 errors total. 9 came in the first set. Those are disgusting numbers. That's not sustainable winning kind of numbers. You have to keep the errors down, and we are just not doing that. But we need more reliability from our hitters if we're going to start winning some games. And at this point in the season, with only 2 weeks left, I just don't see it happening. And that's what happened to Faith and Lily. Despite their high kill totals, they had a plethora of errors, and it kept their hitting rates down. And that's one of the other things too that contributed here to this being yet another game where we won in the box score, and we were dominant in set 1. Or sorry, not set 1. We were dominant in 1 set. That set was set 3. But we came just short in 3 different sets. So yeah, we led in points. We led in kills. We had 13 more kills than Colorado did. We led in assists. We out-hit Colorado 252 to 246. And we had to ride a really solid third set to do it, where we out-hit them really badly in set 3. We hit well in set 2, but we also allowed Colorado to hit 444 in set 2. Our defense was AWOL. Don't know what happened with that. But it seems to be a regularly occurring thing. Happens about one set a game where our defense is just mysteriously missing. And, man, I understand the rotation situation. It's hard to be consistent when three of your best players are injured and are not playing. I mean, Maya and Pam are obviously not at 100% yet. Neither one of them played. Neither one of them played on Wednesday. And as we know already, Nayeli's situation is not going to be changing in the near future. She's out for the remainder of the season. That's nothing new. But with all of that said, I'm not really sure that Emily Bobbitt is ready to be getting the playing time that she is. And that doesn't mean there's anything that we can do about it. That doesn't mean there's anything that Christy can do about that. Because that's what the roster situation demands, is that we play a 6-2 offense right now. But the assist numbers just don't lie. Our offense is far more productive with Morgan setting the ball than Emily. And when you're running a 6-2 offense, you want those setting numbers to be roughly the same, or the assist numbers to be roughly the same. And Morgan is out assisting Emily consistently. I think she out assisted her by 10 or 11 assists on Wednesday night. It was not a good showing for a 6-2 offense. And that means the other problem with that is, it means that our offense isn't as effective. It means when Bobbitt's on the floor instead of Morgan, that Colorado is also probably scoring more. Because if we're not getting the kills as fast, Colorado's going to be scoring at least 3 whenever either one of them's on the floor, because they're in for 3 rotations. But when you're getting kills on your side, you're going to be out there for more points. That's the nature of the game. You want to be out there for as many of your own points as possible, and Morgan's getting that done, and Emily's not. So the question is, what do we take into tomorrow's game? At Texas Tech, they're in Lubbock. We swept Tech in Ames on October 18th. And we were already dealing with the present injuries at the time. So we can beat Tech. Now, since that loss, Texas Tech is 4-2. In that exact same time frame, we are winless. So yeah, we can beat Tech, but that doesn't mean it's going to be easy. Playing in Lubbock is a disadvantage. They have the crowd on their side. We do not. We had the crowd on our side when we played them. Now we don't. A month ago, our team still had something to play for too. The motivating factor, that's a huge difference. The NCAA tournament is completely out of reach now. It was not totally out of reach before. It was still within the realm of possibility. It was a long shot back in October, in the middle of October. It was a long shot, but it was still possible to, pull off a huge run at the end of the season, to get hot and make it to the tournament. Now, it doesn't matter if we went out. We're not making it. We'd still have a losing record. So does our team still have that fight in them? The way we've played in some games after we lose our second set recently here in this losing streak, and the game's on the line, we look deflated. So I would say the answer to that question is no. We don't have that fight in us right now, and we need it. We need it badly. I want to win some games to end the season. I don't want to sweep Texas Tech the first time around and then go to Lubbock and then lose. I mean, that really shows a decline in a team right there, to sweep a team and then go lose to them later in the season. But that's what the situation is right now. And then next week here, we're going to be playing at Arizona State. We're going to continue that same road trip, and then they'll actually follow that up with a trip to Arizona. I don't like our chances to win either of those games. Arizona State's the toughest team in the Big 12 right now. They're probably going to be the Big 12 champion. And I foresee Arizona State actually making a pretty deep run in the NCAA tournament. It's either going to be them or Kansas that's going to be conference champion. Arizona State holds that tiebreaker over Kansas. But that's where that situation is. I do not foresee any situation where we actually beat Arizona State on their home court. The odds of that are so incredibly slim against a team that's really good to begin with. And we're, even at full strength, probably not going to beat them most of the time anyway. And we are also depleted 3 of our best players. Yeah, I'm not a fan of those odds. If we were healthy, then maybe. I don't like our chances against Arizona State right now. I don't think we can win that game. And the way we've been playing lately, something has to change if we're even going to beat Texas Tech and Lubbock. Something's got to change, because if we can't beat Colorado at home, why are we going to be able to beat Texas Tech and Lubbock? Texas Tech is a better team, and now they're going to have home field advantage. So it's not a good situation right now for our girls. I see no reason to believe that this losing streak ends here in the next week. Let's talk about something a little bit better. Let's go to women's basketball here. 2 games here in the last week. Both of them were wins. Both of them don't tell you all that much about the team, because we whooped up on Sacrificial Lamb State and Sacrificial Lamb A&M. We had a W versus Southern on Sunday. That was 84-56, and then we beat St. Thomas last night 80-47. That game against Southern, we actually opened that with a 17-0 run, and from there the game was over. Our margin of victory against them was actually 18 points. So we backed way off the gas pedal after torching them for the first 2 minutes of the game. So this game really wasn't much of a testament to who our team is. It was just a testament to how bad of a team Southern is. Audie Crooks and Addie Brown, they recorded double-doubles. That was good. Iowa State has now made a 3-pointer in NCAA record. That was the 930th. Now after the St. Thomas game, it's 931. In that Southern game, Emily Ryan passed the 800 assist milestone. She can drop dimes. She can really drop dimes, and our offense is so good when Emily's doing that. She is really absolutely fantastic about making every single player around her better. So even when she's not filling up the scorecard with points of her own, you better believe she's generating points when she's out on that basketball court. Against St. Thomas, she actually threw for a whopping 13 assists. She read the St. Thomas defense like a book. In that Southern game, the Cyclones amassed 50 rebounds. I mean, we're doing all sorts of great statistical stuff here. It's just against competition that doesn't really matter. Against St. Thomas, we only allowed 3 fast break points, 25 assists as a team. If there's anything really to learn from these games, it's that right now our offense is pretty fluid. They're moving well. They're responding well to Emily's leadership. And if there's any like 6th player of the year awards, to go around maybe for the team at the end of the year, take a look at Sydney Harris. Keep a very close eye on Sydney Harris. She's a real accurate shooter. She's shooting 57.7% from the floor right now. She can get to the boards. She's averaging over 3 a game. She's averaging 11 points per game off the bench. She comes in there and scores double figures. She's good. She is a talented basketball player. And she's been, so far since she came to Iowa State, she is exceeding expectations. I'd love to see stuff like that from our players that are new to the program. And I really want to see that continue Wednesday here. In-state rivalry against lovable little bro, the University of Northern Iowa Panthers. Games should run somewhat similar to the other games that ISU has played to start the season, probably slightly closer. UNI is a better team than the rest of the competition we've played so far to start the year. They've handily beaten some inferior competition, but they've only actually played one D1 level game so far. They played University of Wisconsin lacrosse or UW Eau Claire or something like that. Some D3 school. And they beat up on them. And then they played Green Bay, who is a mid-major D1, and beat them by like 15 or somewhere in that neighborhood. So yeah, UNI is better than the teams Iowa State has played so far this year. But that doesn't mean they're even remotely close to being in the same league as Iowa State. We should be able to take care of them pretty handily. Even though this game is at the McLeod Center, and UNI does some funny stuff at the McLeod Center. In-state rivalry. Last time we played there, they played us way closer than they should have. It came down to the last minute where we beat them, but we did. That was 2 years ago. I would imagine we don't see anything quite that crazy this time, but keep an eye out because those Panthers can be pesky. That game, like I said, that's on Wednesday. That's going to be 6 p.m. That's going to be broadcast on the Marquee Sports Network or the Panthers Sports Network if you somehow acquire that. I have no idea how one would acquire that, but I guess it's also being broadcast on that. Marquee Sports Network. Go to that. If you got DirecTV or Fubo or something that carries Marquee, that's where you're going to find it. Men's basketball. Win versus Kansas City. This is the kind of game that doesn't tell you very much about yourself. We just got done talking about this with the women. Same case with the men. The only metric that you might even consider indicative of a team's performance when there's this level of a talent gap is how they fare against the spread, which we only missed by 2 points, and it was a pretty darn large spread. It was a 27.5 point spread or something like that. We were just short. So even that isn't enough to tell you very much. We're performing pretty much this way Vegas is expecting us to predict or expecting us to perform. We're doing as expected. We are slotted as the number 7 team in the country, and we're playing like the number 7 team in the country against vastly inferior competition. That's what it is. Curtis Jones and Milan Momcilovic, they put up a ton of points. Keyshawn Gilbert nearly had a double-double. So, yeah, it's a run-of-the-mill game against an inferior opponent. We shot 40% from 3, so that looks good. That's, that 3-point shooting is probably one of the only stats that you can look at kind of isolated because you're going to primarily be shooting threes open anyway, and the team that you're playing against isn't going to make as big of a difference in that. But we take that one and we go into this next week here. We will have a basketball game against Indiana University, Indianapolis. This is the last tune-up game before Maui. Only 3 tune-up games before we go down to Maui. And we better be tuned up because we're not playing any slouches down in Maui. Maui is going to be tough. The opening round game versus Auburn is already slated to be one of the best basketball games in college basketball for the entire season. A win likely pits us against North Carolina. That is also very likely to be a very good, very tough game. Following Maui, the Cyclones return home to face Marquette. This is going to be kind of a miniature gauntlet And hopefully that's going to do a great job of preparing us for the larger gauntlet that we call the Big 12 Conference. Because that's one that it doesn't matter. You're not going to dodge it. You can't, schedule weaker opponents in the Big 12. Like, no, the Big 12 is just tough opponents. That's what you get in the Big 12. The Big 12 is the best basketball league outside of the NBA. That's what it is. So, yeah, forget the weak non-conference strength of schedule from the past 2 years. Otzelberger has the Cyclones running a gauntlet this year. It should effectively prepare them for Big 12 play. It's going to help us out in March because that was what held us back last year. That's why we got a 2 seed, not a 1 seed last year. We got hit for a weak non-con strength of schedule. They didn't want to favor strength of record like they should have. Strength of record is a better metric. And NCSOS is a horrible metric because it only factors in part of the season. And you discount the more recent part of the season. But nonetheless, the committee made it obvious. Non-con strength of schedule is an important metric to them. So we got to cater to their desires. If we want to get a 1 seed this year, we got to play tough teams in the non-con, and we got to beat tough teams in the non-con. So that's what we're going to do. Otzelberger has us running a gauntlet, and we're going to take that and hopefully walk away with some wins. That's what we're going to do. And then last but certainly not least, we do have wrestling this week. That's tonight. We're going to be wrestling Navy. I want to get into last week's loss versus Stanford though first. What were we doing with that starting lineup? I'm sorry, we did not wrestle 5 of our starters. I understand not wrestling Younger Bastida because he was injured. Apparently, Dresser did not like the way that some of our guys were cutting weight. So Evan Frost, Casey Swiderski, Panero Johnson, and MJ Gaitan did not wrestle either. Not a good look. It lost us bouts that we shouldn't have lost. It was ugly. It was ugly. We had no business losing to Stanford, but here we are. And tonight, we're going to be wrestling against Navy. Evan Frost and MJ Gaitan are slated back to return tonight, both listed as possible starters. Bastida is also listed as a possible starter. Whether or not he wrestles, I'm a little bit more doubtful of because Daniel Herrera is proven to be a little bit more reliable as a backup than most backups are. And Bastida was also injured fairly recently. So I'm kind of hesitant to think that he's actually going to be back tonight. But he was listed as a possible starter. So maybe he is feeling better. We'll see. Swiderski's season is over. He suffered a knee injury in practice earlier this week, so he's going to use his red shirt and return next season. We're done seeing Swiderski wrestle this year. So that's going to be a hurt for the team. Swiderski was he had potential to win Big 12 at 141, and now we're not going to see that happen. So the only projected ranked matchup tonight should be at 184. That's Evan Bachman versus Daniel Williams. Daniel Williams is 30th ranked for Navy. Bachman is all the way up to 16th now. And that's where things are at right now for the wrestling program. We need them to turn things around after that nonsense last week where we weren't taking the duel seriously. We need to get a win. We need to start climbing back up these duel rankings because we fell out of the top 10 after not taking that Stanford duel seriously. That's not a place that I want to be looking up from. I want to be in the top 10. I want to be climbing the top 10. I want to be up at the top of the ranks. And right now we're not there. We need to get up there. We definitely need to get up there. But that's going to do it for today's show. Follow the Cornfield Sports Pod on Twitter at CSportsPod. You can find Blake at BlakeAttack1846. Of course, you can find me at SFMattISU. Tap the follow button on Spotify, the plus button on Apple. We're also available on Amazon, CastBox, and Good Pods if you use those. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube and Rumble. Turn on notifications for us. And for Blake Peterson, I'm Matt Menson. And this has been the Cornfield Sports